me in my makeshift studio. Yeah, so welcome. This is going to be the first installment of a new series that I'm going to be calling Consumer Corner, I suppose. So this is where I'm just going to give some consumer advice, pretty much. There's going to be no repairs, no talking about UFC events. Yeah, this is just going to be strictly pure basic consumer advice. And this one goes out to a friend of mine, went to high school together. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, we're talking about beginner film cameras, more specifically beginner SLRs. Let's get into it. So let's start off with very standard consumer camera. The Canon AE-1. I mean, everyone and their mother loves this camera. It's a great camera. This one is in black, but I mean, more commonly they're in silver. I just don't really happen to have, I guess I have this one. Yeah. It's the one con of running a camera repair business. Most of the time my cameras are in pieces, but yes, Canon AE-1. I mean, everybody really knows it. Most people love them. I think they're great cameras. I've had the pleasure of shooting with AE-1s more recently, just to see what all the hype is about. Very simple design. All the shutter speeds are located here. So you can go through all of them very simply. A simple operation, and all of the full walkthroughs for these cameras are going to be in the description down below. This is just going to be more of an overview video for them. What I'll do is I'll run through what I think are good offerings for each brand of camera. So we'll start off with Canon. That would be the Canon AE-1. This is what I would say is the most renowned of all of the introduction cameras. The Canon A1, this one I just picked up a little bit ago. It is not worth that price at all. Great camera. It has a lot of the same features and functionalities as the AE-1, and then also has a lot more automated settings, such as a full auto program and then program setting on the lens as well. Also has a lot more like professional features, such as the guard here to prevent you from goofing up the shutter speeds when you don't want to. Has a 2-second self timer for long exposures. Also has, if that works, Lord have mercy, this is disgusting. This is not the best example of an A1. This is the only one I have currently that's actually put together. Again, I have this one, but I don't think that demonstrates the point as effectively as this one would. So try to imagine this without as much gunk and grease, and check on the video down below to get a better overview of what a clean A1 is supposed to look like. This one has one of the most advanced light metering systems in any camera, has some of the best electronics, and yeah, overall, just a fantastic camera. Pretty much the bridge between those two would be the AE-1 program. It has a lot of the functionality as the AE-1, but it also carries up the program feature from the A1. There is a self timer, simply activated by doing that. Very basic design, very easy to use. Also has a slot here for a grip. The only issue with these I've found is that this poly metal blend that they use for the body definitely shows wear and tear a lot more easily than the metal body of the AE-1, and they run pretty expensive. The Canon FTB. Now there's this one, there's the FT, there's the TL, TLB, TX, all of those. This is basically the mechanical version, and to be honest, I would recommend this for a beginner over the AE-1. Okay, why is that? Well, first of all, it has pretty much all of the same features as the AE-1. Cloth shutter, practically the same shutter speeds, has a locking mechanism as well. It can be fired without battery power, which I think is just a step above, and they can typically be found for a lot cheaper than an AE1. So, and I think that that's definitely something that needs to be out there, is like the price of these cameras. This one was released in 1971, which is 5 years prior to the AE1. It's one of the older body types, so you can see that there's definitely a size difference between the AE1 and the FTB. The FTB is definitely going to be a little bit larger. It's a little bit heavier, but it has a very firm metal body. I think despite its kind of blocky appearance, it's very ergonomic. I do have monster hands though, so that needs to be taken into account. But it basically is the AE1, but just more mechanical. Actually, it's more like the K1000, but with an FD mount. It takes one battery in the side there, but again, the battery's not needed for the operation of the camera. So I think that alone sets it apart and makes it almost a little bit more valuable than any of the other offerings here. I would say, if it was me, and if you were like dead set on getting a Canon camera and you've not done photography before, I would recommend picking up an FTB, because they're easy to find. You can get them for a decent price and shoot with it. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, then you can offload it to someone else if you aren't in the mood, or you can hold on to it. Looks great on a shelf. It's definitely one that you can grow with. Barring that, if you aren't feeling this, if this doesn't do it for you, then I would definitely recommend the A1 next, because I think that while it doesn't share the same cultural significance as an AE1, it does have more functions, more features. And again, they don't typically go for as much as an AE1 or a program. And I just think that, like, body styling wise, very compact for all that it offers. So those would be my two recommendations as far as Canon FD mount lenses are concerned. And again, FD, I don't think I've spoken about this in this video. This is a standard FD lens. So this is a 50mm 1.8. This is the quote-unquote kit lens. And simply all you do for that, put it on like such, line up the red dots there, click it over, and then you're good to go. Now here, this A, this is going to be, so where you select the shutter speed, and then that communicates into the lens what aperture would be correct. Now, aperture is, I'm gonna actually put it on a camera that works, because I don't know if this A1 works. Here is what aperture means. So it's the opening and the closing of those blades. The higher the number, the less light is coming in. There's a bunch of math involved in that we're not going to get into. That's pretty much all you need to know. The wider open it is, the more light gets let in, the narrower the depth of field is, yada yada yada. So, but a 50, in terms of what it looks like, here are some photos taken with a 50. Here's some pictures taken with a 28. So the smaller that the focal number is here, the wider the photo is going to turn out. All right, fantastic. Moving along, let me clear these out of the way. Now, I want to talk about something that a lot of y'all been sleeping on. Not necessarily on purpose, but just because these cameras are a little bit newer and maybe a little bit less popular. But this, you might be thinking, idiot, a Rebel? That's a DSLR. That's like a T3i. That's everyone's first DSLR camera. You'd be incorrect. This is actually 35mm SLR camera. It does take EF mount lenses. Let's get this nice 55-200 ultrasonic lens. Put it on there. Has autofocus features. Has a DX code reader in there, so it will automatically register the film. This is the best alternative to a point and shoot that's not a point and shoot. And as someone such as myself that has primarily EF mount lenses, these cameras are fantastic because it means I can take all of like my really cool EF mount lenses, mount them on this, and shoot film through them. And that's fantastic. So, you know, if you have primarily Canon DSLRs and stuff like that, and you want to just branch into film photography, I would recommend something like this because it's great. I will show some examples of something I took with a camera similar to this. Nobody wants to buy them because they don't look as cool as the older ones. They're super lightweight, they're plastic, and again, it has all of the features of a DSLR. Like, this is the best kept secret in film photography. They don't have the same, like, appeal to them, but I mean, in terms of just being a good camera, like, this is definitely where you want to go, I think. Similarly, because I'm going to try my hardest to not show any bias in these videos. We have a Nikon edition of that same thing. This is an N75. In terms of Nikon cameras, I think this is probably one of my favorites. Very compact, easy to use. I definitely like this on-off switch, the toggle being right here. The only issue is it takes CR2 batteries, which, as it says right there, I just don't have any on me at the moment. But yeah, there's the same features basically as the Canon here. Nikon made a number of these. This one was one of their later models. I think this one came out in like the late 90s or early 2000s. So if you have Nikon mount lenses, you can use this. I would say that this might be a good step into Nikon film photography, just because the older Nikon film cameras are a lot more finicky. They were more crafted towards professionals, quote unquote, and this is a little bit more consumer based. So I think this would be the way to go if you want to get into Nikon. Be my guest, not for me. The issue with this one as well, it does have autofocus, but because they're using the old mounting system, they wanted to make sure that you could use the older analog lenses. So all the autofocus controls are on body, which would be right here, this switch from M to AF. And then there's this little screw there. You can see that it pops out, and that's what controls the autofocus on the lens. So this one's good because if you have like a newer Nikon DSLR outside of the Z6, the new mirrorless one, if you have a DSLR, a Nikon DSLR, you can use the lens on this, or you can pick up a relatively cheaper, older Nikon SLR lens, such as this one. I don't recommend this one because I don't know if you can see in there, but the blades are actually rusted shut. It is disgusting, but this will potentially mount onto there, like so. So if this lens worked, and if this camera works, I don't know if it does because I don't have batteries for it, this would be a sweet little combo. You got this old 50mm lens on there, pretty sick. But again, I don't know if any of these work, so kind of mute point. It has a built-in flash as well as this one, which I think also sets it apart. The built-in flash means that you can shoot at night fairly easily. Yeah, oh my god, that's really stiff on it. It's so gross. So that would be it in terms of kind of newer age, easier to get into film photography options. I would recommend something like these autofocus SLR systems. If you'd like more recommendations on that front, comment down below. I have a list that I think are personally great. And then also, I think I might make another video where I go over prices of these cameras and of other cameras and talk about kind of the reality of those prices and whether or not they're justified. I'll say that as much. All right, next up. This next one we're going to talk about is another one of those that's kind of ubiquitous with beginner cameras. This is what everybody will tell you to get. This is what I would tell people to get. But going back to the mini videos that I've made on this topic of beginner cameras, they're just way too expensive now. That would be, of course, the Pentax K1000. This one has definitely seen better days. I just got this one in and have yet to clean it and or test it. But, I mean, it's all mechanical. Has a Pentax K-mount lens, which is super versatile. So many good lenses with that lens mount. This one is Zach's camera, so Zach, if you're out there, have your camera. No thrills, no frills. It's just super basic design. And again, the walkthrough for this camera will be down in the description below. I've made this point a few times now in videos, but I don't think I've edited those yet. But I saw one of these being sold for $500. That is ludicrous. Do not spend $500 on a K1000. These cameras are not worth $500. They're amazing cameras. I think they're priceless. I would never sell my K1000 in a million years. But it's not worth $500. Like, this should be the quintessential beginner camera for somebody, and I think that pricing it at $500 is disgusting, and that's extortion. But we digress. That's where the market is at today, so expect ludicrous prices for a K1000 in a lens, but they shouldn't be that way. So an alternative to a K1000 is, of course, this one, the Spotmatic F. Now, you're thinking, wow, that looks horrible. And you'd be correct. This is a very not beautiful looking camera. I hate the leather that's used on it, but that's fine. I also really don't like the self-timer bit. It doesn't do much for me, but definitely redeems itself with this advanced lever. I mean, look at that. That is just a work of art. So this is the Spotmatic F. Okay, this is the camera that was released right before the K1000 was released. It has literally the exact same light metering system. Exact same. There is something in the K1000 manual, repair manual, talking about how to replace Spotmatic F light meter with a K1000. Hilarious. Other thing to note that's different, this is a M42 mount, which means the thread mount. So it will take different lenses than the K1000, which takes K-mount lenses. So it's the same functionality, but has a wider lens array that are also a lot cheaper than K-mount lenses can be. And it's basically the same camera. It has all of the same shutter speeds. The metering system is very simple to use. You just press up on that. And also it has a locking mechanism for the shutter. So if you don't want to fire, you can just move it over there and that locks the shutter button. So this one's gross and dirty as well because I just got it and have yet to clean it, but you get the point. Spotmatic F, this is definitely a better alternative to a K1000, and you can likely find these for a lot less money out there. There's also another whole range of Spotmatic cameras that I think are great for beginners. Jesus, dropping this. But if we're talking about M42 mounts, there is so many third-party camera M42 mounts. This is a Fujica ST605N. I know literally nothing about this camera, just as I know literally nothing about most of the third-party M42 mount cameras, because like they're not worth anything, really. I mean, like in the realm of my experience with film photography with cameras in general, I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it for the series of videos here. My bias strictly lies in what is easy to fix, what can be sold for the most amount of money, what can be bought for the cheapest, fixed the easiest, and then resold for the most, basically. So that's talking about like AE ones, buying those up, doing a quick CLA on them, flipping them for like $200. Like that's kind of where we're at. These don't sell, okay? But if you, the buyer, know what you're looking for, and you can make this work, just because this isn't the most popular, just because it's not the AE1, just because it's not the Leica M6, doesn't mean that it isn't worth your time. It's still a camera. Granted, the 700 shutter speed is very odd to me. Like it's just a weird place to stop. The battery compartment in the back is also weird. But in terms of being a camera, it has a cloth shutter, which that's fantastic. There's a man that is doing yard work right outside my window, of course. M42 mount means that you can use the exact same lenses on this Spotmatic F as you can on this. Has a self-timer, has, I believe this is an aperture preview. And, oh, it even has, if you can see in there, but shutter speed displays on the side. That's fantastic. So yeah, this is definitely an option out there. And you can probably get one of these for like $5, honestly. And this can be a perfectly fine and usable camera. There's also Prakticas, which were made in East Germany. So the construction of those may or may not be pretty poor. But in terms of just learning the basics of film photography, I would say that this is also a very viable place to start. Now I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking it too. Why didn't you mention the ME Super? Because you love the ME Super. And that's true, I do love the ME Super. And in fact, I will mention the ME Super really briefly. I just couldn't find a model until just now. This is the Pentax ME Super. This is the smallest 35mm SLR body. It shares the same body as the Pentax MX. This one is more electronic. Actually, it's entirely electronic, whereas the MX is not. They do have two mechanical speeds, which would be 1/125 and bulb. But in terms of compact SLR system, this is definitely the way to go. Has an auto setting, so if you're just getting into photography, just throw a lens on here and you're pretty much good to go. It has a manual setting, so you can be more selective with your creative choices. This is another good camera. These go for fairly cheap. However, these do have many issues that are not the easiest things to fix. So that's something that I would be wary of personally. And that's why I can't like recommend these outright because of all of the issues. But if you can find one in good shape for not a lot of money, like the ones I'm selling, then I would say that this is probably a good way to go. Alternatively, there's also the MX here, which is the same body style. This one is my personal one. I got this nice 40mm pancake lens. Look at how little this thing is. It's adorable. This thing is all mechanical, and it is also Ansel Adams' old camera, for real. Can't say that seriously. Someone got mad at me about that. So I don't think that's real. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, dude. Mechanical speeds, though, I mean, this is just like the top tier Pentax SLR. If you can find one of these for cheap that's working, buy it. This is amazing. But anyway, it's not a great beginner camera, I would say, just given the cost and given the amount of effort needed to use it. The Olympus OM-1, okay? I just got this one not too long ago. It is scuffed as all heck. It's gross. To be completely honest, it's disgusting. But it's a great beginner camera because, again, it goes back to the basic principles of 35mm SLR photography, which means you have your shutter speeds here that you can select. You have control over that. You can put a lens on. I don't have any Olympus lenses on hand, but you can put a lens on, select your apertures, your focus, all that stuff. Like, you have complete control over this camera. Yes, the light metering system is pretty dodgy. Yes, they do break a lot. Yes, they're difficult to fix, but in terms of overall user experience, yes, it's very weird, but it's still a very good camera. So I definitely would recommend that if you are in the market for something a little bit more odd. The issue with these is that they do go for a lot. People sell them for a lot. It's hard to find like a very good quality one for a low cost, so I would be wary about that. Don't get an OM-10. OM-10s were supposed to be beginner cameras, and then they turned out to be trash. So avoid the OM-10. If you're gonna get an Olympus, I would recommend an OM-1 or an OM-2. OM-1N is also a good camera. It's basically an OM, but with a little bit different electronics for the light meter. So fully mechanical is the way to go here. And then the next, like, not oddity, but kind of oddity would be this Minolta. Any of the SRT series would be fantastic. This is an SRT 201. There's the SRT 101, which is very popular. Shout out Minolta gang. Please follow me and like my videos because I'm here. I support your cause. They were originally marketed as like consumer cameras, which is great. The issue is that the quality kind of can show that sometimes. There's this system here, which is the aperture system. And if this does not slide back, your camera is pretty much broken because there is a string that runs from here all the way up through around here and around to here, and that controls basically the light metering system and the shutter speed control system as well. Very problematic. I've tried to reset it a couple of times and it's terrible. Will not recommend ever doing that. Sometimes also the shutter will stall and you will need to force the self-timer as well as advance and fire it all at the same time. That's a little bit frustrating. The glass is kind of cheaply produced, but it is usable for what it is. The body is metal, but it does show scuffs fairly easily. I think this one probably got dropped off the top of a building. As you can see, there's a small dent there. The metering system as well is fairly archaic. If you get one of these that's corroded shut, it is the worst thing in the world to try and get off. And then also if you leave this on, which I am one to do, you will drain the battery system completely, and that's just kind of frustrating. The needle as well is a little bit odd because it moves opposite to every other camera, but you do have this nice readout on the bottom, which, thank you, which shows what shutter speed you're firing at. If you have a 202, SRT 202, there's an aperture preview window, and from what I remember, these go for fairly cheap, and the lenses are also fairly inexpensive. So this is another great beginner camera. This would kind of be in the conversation to contend with a Pentax K1000 and the FTB in the realm of larger mechanical metal cameras. I think that does it in terms of the gear. If money was actually no object, I would probably say the K1000, because that to me would be just the camera to get. I'm gonna get one here to display while I wax lyrical about it. This really has all of the features that you need in a camera. Like, there are others that offer a lot more, but in terms of just practicality, this one is very unlikely to break down on you. Very durable, easy to maneuver. It's incredibly well built, I will say. It will definitely stand the test of time. Something like this. So the alternative the alternative in the Canon line would be like the FTB. Minolta would be like the SRT. Stuff like that I feel like would be something that I would recommend outright. In terms of wanting to kind of ease your way into photography, I would definitely say that these models, the more plastic built bodies, are probably going to be the way to go, especially if you have digital camera experience or something like that. This is a pretty easy bridge to cross. The issue I have with them is that it doesn't feel as grounded, if that makes sense. Like, when I'm shooting with one of these, I tend to shoot through the roll a lot faster, and I shoot through rolls pretty fast as is. You just feel a little bit more removed from the overall experience. You don't have that same mechanical interfacing as you do with something where you're advancing the lever. So I would caution against that, but in terms of just like, I want to see what shooting film is like, because you want the film look, then this would be the way to go, I think. There's also, again, many other options in terms of these autofocus SLR systems. There's more beefy ones, there's thinner ones, there's ones that offer more, there's ones that offer less. But, I mean, there's so many of these out there, so many different models that you can really get into it. Those are just the ones I have currently. Let me wait for this massive truck to drive by here. There's just like traffic outside my window every day. I think they just like love commuting in front of my window just to, hey, we're here, thank you, got it. In terms of starting, let me grab this better looking K1000 that I repaired. In terms of beginning photography, trying to kind of find an appealing style. What are we doing out there? Lord have mercy. Yeah, drive back. He literally he just drove up, reversed, and is driving back. Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you. All right. In terms of beginning, I would say 50mm is the best place to start. It is a standard look. You can take decent landscapes with 50mm. You can also do very good portraits with 50mm, especially with the higher apertures, because you can get more, a shallower depth of field. People like that for portrait looks. So I think that's a pretty good place to start. And also, you're not limited to, like, if you wanted to buy a fisheye lens, you can, but those would typically go for a lot more. And then you're kind of stuck with, okay, well, now everything I take is going to be distorted. Which if you're into that, that's fine, but you just have to understand that that is a limiting quality to these cameras, or to the lens choices. So something like a 50, it's a great place to start. But yeah, if you have any other further questions, if there's any other like consumer things that you would like me to go over, feel free to comment down below. I'd be happy to get back to you. To my friend that I'm originally creating this video for, I hope you find this helpful. If you have any questions, make sure to email me or shoot me a DM, whatever works best for you. And yeah, if you see any of these cameras that you're interested in, you want to talk about them, shoot me an email as well. I'd be happy to sell them to you. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Let me know if you enjoyed this kind of content. I've got a few more ideas for consumer advice videos that I want to make. So if you enjoyed my unbiased approach, as unbiased as I can be, I will continue working at that moving forward. But yes, this was Consumer Corner, so I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, catch you on the next one.